And then when I got older, we moved to another farm, which was 2.5 miles away, which was part of the, what they called the Rumpke Brothers farm. And then after that, when I was in 8th grade going into 9th grade, we moved to another farm, which was only a mile away from the home farm. And we kept all 3 farms. So really I never moved away as a kid doing that. But when I got older, I moved into Hutchinson when I went to Hutchinson Votech. And also when I started out helping out on the farm, but one of the rules was that when you got 16 you needed to go get a job. And so I went and got it. If we wanted to be successful, we needed to either be a secretary or an accountant, or getting a business job would be a better life. And so I took bookkeeping or accounting in Hutchinson Votech, and I got a job with Jerry's Tire Shop, and I did the accounts receivables for him. And so I was working 3 jobs. But then my second year of accounting, it became corporate accounting, and I really wasn't interested in that. So I didn't finish my second year of accounting. But then I quit in February, and in May I got a position at the Hutchinson Votech in the ag departments. I was the secretary to the ag departments. That was ag building construction, farm diesel mechanics, dairy herd management, and adult ag are the ag departments that I worked for. And I did that for a while. And then after about 4 years went into it, there was budget cuts, and I was the lowest senior secretary, and so I lost my position. And I was about 3 years older than most of these kids that were coming through there, and so they became my friends. And I love the farm life, and I love that type of area. There are ties to home, and so that kept me closer to Minnesota. And the love of my life lived in Minnesota, so we stayed there, and so we made the decisions together.
Well, we used to work pretty hard in the summertime. I guess, back when we were little, we did a lot more manual labor compared to nowadays. Nowadays, everything's big enough we can use equipment to move hay or whatever. As kids, we remember picking rocks, walking through the fields and picking them all up by hand. And the little kids picked up the small rocks, and the bigger boys picked up the bigger rocks. And as you grew, you kind of took on the job of the next generation or whatever. Like I said, you learned how to drive tractors when you were probably a little smaller than we should have been, but we got the job done. I mean, you needed the extra labor, and no one was around to do it, so as soon as you could do the job, you were put in the job, and it worked. Nowadays, I don't know if it would go. I mean, people with social service, whatever, would probably have a heart attack. But I mean, back then we did it. I guess it worked. Yeah. After high school, I went over to New Richmond, Wisconsin. They had a 1-year course for dairy herd management. Folks thought it was good that we'd leave home for a year or get away from the home for a while to experience new things, work with different people. After going to school there for a year, I lived on a farm while I was there too. That was part of the class, so you got to work with a farmer while you went to school. And then afterwards, a classmate of mine got me an interview with a farm that he was working on that needed help, after the kids were gone. So I worked there for about a year and a half, about 14 months, I guess, and worked with him. He was a very progressive farmer. He was a college professor that went back home after he had worked out as a professor, issues or whatever, teaching whatever. He went back to the farm again to raise his family and work. So I worked for him for, like I said, 14 months or so. And then
well, first of all, it's the memories of our children. We had a child that was stillborn, which was a hard memory for us. That happened in December of 1988. And then the second child that we have is Scott Cole, and he was born 13 weeks?
It's almost 14 weeks maybe.
14
13, 14 weeks premature.
Premature, and weighed 2.5 pounds when he was born. And so he spent the first 13 weeks from Labor Day to Thanksgiving at St. Paul Children's Hospital. And he has cerebral palsy, but came home to us and has done fantastic ever since. Then there's the birth of our third child, which would be Sarah, and I spent 4 months on bed rest before she was born, but then she was born in August, and was fine, and is a wonderful young lady.
4 months with your wife on bed rest is a long summer.
It made things difficult with Greg being farming, and part of that bed rest I was hospitalized at 2 different towns, and so that made it real complicated. But it was a significant memory.
Oh yeah.
At the start of our marriage, and so those were trying times. But we've had lots of other wonderful memories. Living on the farm, we enjoy the farm a lot. That's some more of the memories. I always say this is my cabin up north because when people from Hutchinson come up to the Brainerd area for their vacations, and I always like that my house is part of it, because if you see where we're located, on our land we have woods, and we have a little pond, and I have a big yard, so I feel, and I love my cabin, which is my new house. We had 2 houses when we first got married. Greg one night shown a piece of woods and said, "This is where you're going to live," and I just laughed at him. So when we first got married, we brought in a trailer house. In 6 years?
6 years later, we moved it in. Well, we moved it in '87. We didn't live in it the first year because we just parked it there. Had an opportunity to buy the trailer house a little bit earlier before we got married. So we just parked it for the winter on site. And then the following summer, before we got married, is when I was getting it hooked up to the water, the septic system, getting it set up to live in.
Actually make the site.
Yeah, and then that way we parked it for that winter.
And the site was right across the road from Greg's parents' house, because he farms with his parents, and so that was we made a new separate site, which we eventually bought. And so we had the trailer house, and then it was exciting to build a new house.
Yeah, and then we did that in '87, and then in '93 we built a new house on site. We moved the trailer house off just a little ways so we could still live in it while we were building the new house. So, and then in '93 we built the more permanent new house, I should say.
And so I like my cabin. It's really nice.
Some of the memories I have growing up in central Minnesota is that I grew up on the family farm. I mean, my dad runs a Golden Plum chicken barn. My mom does daycare, so I sort of grew up helping out on the farm. If it wasn't out in the chicken barn or doing light field work, I was in the house helping mom with the daycare kids. So, on top of that, I mean, that's just, besides that, I also did a lot of, I was involved in the local high school theater. I was the technical director, if you want to say, of the theater. I handled a lot of the lights and sound, both in the auditorium and on other events that were done in either the gymnasium or outside. One of my most favorite memories, probably, and what actually got me into the current field that I actually want to pursue, is I got to work at Little Falls Radio as a board operator, and doing that, I basically did all the tech work for our weekend or Friday night football games. So I was in charge of making sure that all the proper commercials got played, that the announcer got on air, that other local scores were passed along as they became available. I was involved in both just local football games, basketball, and hockey games. I also did tech work for boys state hockey. I was able to, when we did our broadcasts from the Mariucci Arena, I was involved in that. So yeah, and that sort of led me into my current career path of wanting to be a radio broadcaster, along with, I always liked the political scene, so I'm also double majoring in political science right now. So that's right now what I'm doing. I've grown up. You have growing up in central Minnesota.
I guess some of my favorite memories is just being around on the farm, getting to walk out and see the beautiful like grass in the summer, and also see like cows, and getting to be outside. It's so nice weather. And also one memory from like the weather and farming is my cousin and I were in my grandpa's field, and it was pretty muddy. We decided to have like a mud fight, and we were just covered head to toe in mud. And I just like being outside. A lot of fun things I've done outside, and around like farming especially, it's a big part of me. I have my sheep. I was with my sheep all the time, because getting them ready for the fair, getting to go to the county fair and show livestock, but also like non-livestock, and just seeing a lot of people. And it's not a big town, but it's also a small town that you get to know a lot of people, and I'll get to know like close friends and family.
When I get out and if I find a job, I'm going to try and, if I can, find one in a small local area radio station, whether it be here in Minnesota or just anywhere. I just like the small town feel. It's a little more personable, really, when you think, I want to stay in central Minnesota, but as with any employment, you have to go where the jobs are. And if that means traveling all the way to New York or Washington, D.C. to find a job, I'm going to do it. So
I'm not sure if I would stay like in central Minnesota, possibly the Midwest. I'm going to school in South Dakota State in Brookings, South Dakota, and I like the area out there. It's really nice, windy, but you get used to it. But I probably would stay in the Midwest just because I like also Wisconsin, Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota. It's just a good place to be. So I'm not sure yet, but I hope so, because it's a good place to be.
okay, an adventure, and you just got to sometimes take the bull by the horns, so to say, and make your own path. You have to go out on your own. They call space the last frontier. However, I don't think there is a last frontier for anybody, because there's always a new path to be blazed, a new something to be found, and the only thing that limits that is your imagination. So
Go for it.
I'd say jump in, don't look, just leap, and hopefully find a spot to end up.